Alright, retro track picks, it's official. So last video I set up some eligibility guidelines. We're going to use those guidelines today. Essentially, I compiled a list of about 64 tracks that I would deem eligible for my Mario Kart retro track selection in the next game, 9X, whatever you want to call it. And if you don't see a certain track on here that you're expecting, I probably have an explanation in the last video that I would recommend checking out. Now admittedly, this video was originally going to be called Retro Track Predictions of some sort and focus solely on this group of 64 tracks, but as I started to play around with the field of possibilities using my list, I couldn't help but feel that the list is somewhat limiting. This is because a lot of these courses easily cancel each other out to start. For instance, Double Dash and DS have 7 combined eligible tracks, but we all think that the GBA Rainbow Road is going to get the slot due to precedent, so that reduces our pool to 5, and considering both have a Bowser's Castle left, it's as good as just 4. Furthermore, of how little tracks there are in a few of these categories now, once you make your selections in those categories, it becomes much more difficult to put cups together. Some cups felt like an SNES, 3DS, and a Wii U course were required, for instance. The difficulty mainly comes when committing to selecting 24 retro tracks, but as previously mentioned, I don't really see 16 as a viable tally anymore. I think it would just feel underwhelming after the deluxe era, and this has made me start to doubt my criteria a little bit, and maybe ponder the question, is this proof that the former system is just done for good? Was my video actually a waste? Well, yes and no. I still did the project as originally planned, and I'm going to be sharing the results, but there's just 2 major things to consider when taking these results in. 1, these predictions feel almost too predictable for Nintendo to actually do. There are very few variables in a sense, and I think Nintendo likes being unpredictable. And second, the next Mario Kart is the last game that they would hypothetically be able to get away with using what we'll call the traditional retro track selection system. And if the writing is on the wall already, I'm not sure that they milk it until the very end. In this new content era, perhaps the old system has outlived its usefulness. So admittedly, what I'm about to share, I don't know if I can definitively call predictions, because after running the numbers, the projections, the simulations, whatever you want to call them, I do have some extreme doubts now. And when I question my initial instincts, I don't usually double down. I typically update my opinion. That being said, there's probably a valuable exercise here, and I don't think it's worth getting rid of all progress I've really worked on in the last month on this video and all that. But to start, this video is going to be taking a look at what the next game could look like if they decide to run back the traditional selection system one last time. And as per usual, I'll be trying to solve it in puzzle-style format. With this all being said, one comment on the last video also did jump out to me as notable. Bernie Python 8230 wrote this idea that I think makes a lot of sense. Pretty much the idea here is that the Shell through Lightning Cup would stay how they always have, introducing first-time retros only. 2 new cups would potentially buck the trend though, and be more free/open. And I like this idea a lot. This is because it allows the traditional retro cups to still have some degree of unpredictability within them, but without just decreasing the total amount of content in the game. Matter of fact, these later 2 cups could hypothetically keep everything on the board really, and the importance of getting back around to every course in the series would still be maintained with the traditional retro cups. The menu would presumably look like MK8U's, and that begs the question, what about the 2 new Nitro cups that would be added alongside? Well, perhaps these cups would have some crossover courses again. Maybe the 2 retro cups might have some retro crossover courses. Maybe Piranha Plant Pipeline could go in one of these cups. Maybe some arcade tracks could get a shot even. Maybe there'd be an RMX cup. Or maybe they'd just experiment with more of their sector-styled tracks here. I would like to explore this idea, but I'm not sure if I can justify a full new video for it, so if you want to see how this would change my thought process, stick around until the very end, or just jump to the appropriate timestamp in the description, whatever floats your boat. But anyways, I've prefaced enough, let's get into it with the traditional selection system first. In the past, retro predictions usually had to start off with a random premise chosen by the predictor. You'd have to feel really strongly that a certain track's going to return, and then kind of build a roster around it. The thing is, choosing the wrong starting point could make your full prediction entirely wrong. Luckily, we're in a unique situation because we don't really have to throw darts at the wall anymore because we have some obvious starting points. N64 Wario Stadium is the easiest one to make, because if we assume every game must be represented and we want to have no repicks, it by definition must make it in. One that is slightly less guaranteed as a pick is GBA Rainbow Road, and with the booster pass shaking up the retro Rainbow Road order a bit, it could put this selection into question. But still, I am expecting them to go back to the main order for the base game picks, and perhaps they might finish the Rainbow Roads up in the DLC, but this remains my second pick still. As stated earlier, this would take both GCN and DS Rainbow Road off the board though. In the last video, I talked about how I had 2 earlier predictions, and in both of them, I selected GCN Bowser's Castle. But in a post-Booster Pass world, things are a little bit different now. Because with Shroom Ridge and Mario Circuit returning in the DLC, and us taking DS Rainbow Road off the board, that leaves only 2 selectable DS courses right now. Quite frankly, I can't see a world where Figure 8 Circuit is the only DS track that they bring back. I think it would be a bit of an insult to the DS fans even, and I think that would be something that Nintendo would recognize. And as such, this gives me no choice but to include DS Bowser's Castle, and yes, I'm adding the apostrophe. So these 3 courses feel like layups to me, and with their addition, I'd be eliminating the other 3D Bowser Castle levels and Rainbow Roads from contention to be in our base game. I don't think that they do multiple tracks of the same style here. So with 3 courses of 24 in, we've already eliminated 7, and our pool remains at 54 total. That's 10 total courses off the selection board already, and we still have 21 picks to go. I've not eliminated Figure 8 Circuit yet, but I actually believe our N64 and DS courses could be sealed already. And this makes the next easiest discussion the Double Dash courses, followed by the suddenly small amount of remaining Wii tracks. GCN Mushroom City feels like a slam dunk to me. We already have a Retro Wario course and there's nothing else to select from the GameCube tracks, and the only other traffic option left is Woohoo Loop, and I don't think that the main focus of that track was just being a traffic course. It was kind of a sector track and a unique crossover course. So I'm not saying it's a lock, but Mushroom City feels pretty close to one. 8 Deluxe has pretty much every other traffic course in the series outside of the GameCube ones, so it feels like it's about time for this one. On the other hand, I still feel like the odds for GCN Mario Coliseum are quite high too, despite us selecting Wario Stadium already. We've frequently seen examples of 2 tracks representing a character in the same game before, and I don't think that these 2 are that similar. I think it'd also be awkward for all of the remaining Double Dash tracks to be in the Special Cup. It'd be hard to balance that down the road, though admittedly in an era with DLC this is a bit less of a problem. But the idea of just 1 Double Dash track feels low when considering our already low tally of courses from the original 3D Mario Karts at this point. And I think that this track is particularly iconic as well. Now originally, Wii courses were not too easy to predict for Mario Kart 9 in the past, but the Booster Pass has made the picture a whole lot more clear. It seems obvious to me that Mario Kart Wii is kind of seen in a special light, and the fans must be fed, and there's only 1 course left that could truly do that on this list. That, of course, is Toad's Factory. This track was kind of the one that got away in the Booster Pass. With Bowser's Castle off our board already, it feels kind of necessary, and I know many people like Dry Dry Ruins, but I don't think that it in a circuit would sit too well with the Wii fans right now. I feel like they would want a little more. So I'm going to fulfill the thumbnail I keep referencing in my videos, and add in Toad's Factory right after Wario Coliseum. So the eliminations are a little bit more debatable this time. I don't think Mushroom City actually eliminates anything at all. With Turnpike, Moonview, and Shroom Ridge all recently used for the first time, there's not a lot of conflict, and I think that they could even opt to put Woohoo Loop in alongside it, because I don't think that they resemble each other that much, honestly. I will be eliminating Wario Shipyard, however. It seems hard to justify it with 2 Wario tracks already. And I'll also be getting rid of Toad Harbor here. Quite frankly, I see Toad's Factory as a second cup type of track with 24 total courses instead of 16, and I think that Toad Harbor would feel really overshined if it were to be in this spot, so I could see it being saved for later. But perhaps most controversially, I will be eliminating Mount Wario as well. I've seen a growing sentiment around the Mario Kart content sphere that priority retros are a real thing, and that the best courses must be brought back immediately in the next game. It justifies why Music Park was shown off so early in the Mario Kart 8 trailer, and why they assembled what many see as the Wii track God Squad for Mario Kart 7. But if I'm being honest, I'm not actually sold on this theory. I think what actually happened was Retro Studios just got their way with the retro picks in Mario Kart 7 in general, because I think that the DS tracks they chose there were also way better than the ones that we got as priority retros in Mario Kart Wii. Look man, I love me some Yoshi Falls, but are it and Desert Hills what you would call priority retro remakes? I'm not sure about that. Speaking of the DS though, the entire MKDS retro lineup consisted of technically priority retros, and I see a lot of criticism for that group of courses. I understand that there were hardware limitations on the DS, but I still don't see clear evidence that all the best tracks must come back immediately. I think it's possible that many fan favorites immediately return, but I also think that they might wait. 3 games in a row now, we got the final track of the Star Cup 2 games later actually, as the 3rd track of the Lightning Cup, and this includes fan favorites such as DK Mountain and Airship Fortress, tracks that can be officially deemed not priority retros despite their fan favorite status. And though I don't see this pattern as a guarantee for the future, I can see Mount Wario following this trend, especially when considering the other 2 Wario courses that have been patiently waiting their turn for 4 games now. So yeah, give me Stadium and Coliseum. Mount Wario will return after some time, but it just won't be happening in my honest predictions. Alright, so status update. We need 18 more tracks out of 48 total eligible ones remaining, so what's next? Well, I think there is still another apparent discussion that is needed, because looking at the remaining Wii distribution, I think they need to be selecting one of these 2 circuits. Otherwise, 2 of your remaining 4 courses are going to just be the circuit tracks, and I think it would be best to burn one of them alongside Toad's Factory, because everybody is still going to be excited about Toad's Factory. I can't justify it, but my gut wants to put Wii Mario Circuit in the Shell 2 slot of Toad's Factory in the second cup really badly, kinda like GBA, MC, and MK8. But let's look at the logistics for a minute. If you take Mario Circuit, I think it gets in the way of nearly every secondary circuit track that could be selected, except maybe MC4. And I personally buy that there will be at least 2 retro circuits, especially with an increase in retro tracks to 24. But this all is because nearly every other remaining circuit is a Mario circuit, since they haven't been really making new circuits referencing other characters recently. Toad Circuit was the last one of that variety, and like I tried to emphasize previously, they probably knocked it out in the booster pass for a reason. Now technically, Figure 8 Circuit still is here, and you could go with it in Dry Dry Ruins, but I just don't like the idea of leaving both circuits remaining with just Bowser's Castle to complement them down the road. Of interesting note, there were surprisingly none of the 5 Luigi racetracks in the series present in Mario Kart 8. They haven't made a new one in a while as well, and I don't think that Twisted Mansion counts. So while Wii Luigi Circuit is kinda lame as a course, it feels like a pretty logical pick here. I think that Wii fans would still be fine with it and shouldn't feel cheated with Toad's Factory still selected, and weirdly, this course feels like it wouldn't be as poorly received as Toad Circuit because of the nostalgia factor, even if I find it to be honestly a worse course. As such, I think it's a fit. We need a simple circuit track here, and taking this well-known one will keep the pool from being overloaded for potential future entries. With this decision though, I'm going to eliminate Figure 8 Circuit now, since Luigi Circuit serves its purpose, along with Wii Mario Circuit, since I don't think they'd ever choose both. Mario Kart Stadium will also be taking off the board. It feels like both Luigi Circuit and Wario Stadium even kind of cover what it would be adding. So now a big question remains. Could they still choose Dry Dry Ruins, or are the Wii tracks done? Taking DDR would leave Wii Mario Circuit and Wii Bowser's Castle isolated as the remaining Wii tracks. So one might say, okay, just put DDR in here, we'll have 2 Wii tracks for the next game, and it's simple as that. But keep in mind, GCN Bowser's Castle is also still in our future track pool, and it's extremely high in the priority list at that. I think they would look to avoid this scenario, because otherwise you just fall into the situation we had earlier with Figure 8 Circuit and DS Bowser's Castle, where you can't really envision them bringing back just the circuit. So keeping Dry Dry Ruins in the future track pool kind of eases this issue a little bit and kind of provides some insurance for that potential issue. So this kind of awkward scenario is one that I would ordinarily eliminate Dry Dry Ruins over, but in this new era, I could kind of see this actually being resolved by a DLC pack. Say they add GCN Bowser's Castle, problem solved. So I will keep DDR in consideration, but there are other desert tracks that they could go with too that I see as potentially preferable selections when considering the overall puzzle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the rest of the picks, see if it worked, and see if it actually makes sense to add DDR based on what I select. So now we need 17 more courses. We have 7 in, we've eliminated 13, and our pool resides at 44 now. So question, is it finally time to throw darts at the wall? Well, not quite yet, and I have a few other ideas. The Shell Cup is kind of interesting because we can kind of utilize the fact that there's only a handful of tracks that could actually be picked for it, and with so many of the game categories just empty now, it feels like we actually have very limited options. My thought is that none of the Switch courses are really great for a potential Shell Cup. The closest fit feels like Sky High Sunday, but that track does have a lot of space to fall off and has unique physics that I think would be avoided in a first cup situation. So I feel like the only formula to make an otherwise functional Shell Cup at this point would be to take Wii Luigi Circuit alongside a 3DS, Wii U, and an SNES track. So what options do we really have here? When looking at the SNES courses, there are a few options I think would make sense for the Shell Cup. I think Ghost Valley 1, Bowser Castle 1, Choco Island 1, and despite its later cup status, Koopa Beach 1 could honestly fit. I also feel like I would kind of want to prioritize the tracks that weren't in Tour to keep things fresh as possible, so perhaps BC1 and KB1 feel like the frontrunners here. Notably, the other SNES courses to not appear in Tour are Bowser Castle 2, Ghost Valley 3, and Mario Circuit 4. One thing I have noticed about the SMK tracks is that outside of the Mario circuits, and I suppose Rainbow Road now, they haven't brought back the same track types in back-to-back games. This would potentially put into question both the Bowser Castle levels, with BC3 being a part of the most recently released tracks of the series at this point. One thing I could do instead is choose GBA BC4, but I also have some reservations in doing this as well, because speaking of non-tour courses, the only one remaining from Super Circuit is Broken Pier. That gives me strong incentives to want to add it, and I feel like it would probably not be a great idea to include 3 tracks from the GBA Special Cup in the same set of 24 courses, especially with DS Bowser's Castle, another likely BC in the Final Cup, in the mix already. This weirdly makes me feel like BC4 would be more appropriate as a DLC course, considering it was a Tour port that had weirdly high effort, and I find it hard to believe that that track only exists for Tour. Bowser Castle 4 would pair potentially well with a Ghost Valley 3, but I think they could just as easily pair Broken Pier with an SNES BC if they want to focus on tracks that weren't in Tour. Or potentially, they could choose GBA Broken Pier without a 2D Bowser's Castle altogether. And while Mario Kart 8 only had 2 Bowser's Castle levels in all 96 courses, and we likely don't want to repeat that again, we would still be matching that total with DS Bowser's Castle as a retro course alongside the new one in the Nitro courses. With a lot of DLC spots presumably available, I'm sure that they will pass the 8 total easily. So I still find adding just Broken Pier without a 2D Bowser's Castle to be a good move right now. It provides a GBA track that wasn't in Tour alongside Rainbow Road, and on top of it, we don't really need a 2D BC super urgently since we just got one in the last wave for the booster pass. So going all the way back to the Shell Cup, this makes me think that SNES Koopa Beach 1 might be the best fit. Considering Wario Shipyard is off the board, this could be a track that fills the underwater track void that's been created. And BC3's new standards for the SNES courses would surely require them to think more outside the box, and I think utilizing underwater here would be a way to make a rather simplistic track fit a modern Shell Cup. And while this track was originally a Star Cup course, I honestly see it translating to an early cup really easily, and they always seem to do a few unconventional things with every new batch of courses anyway. On the contrary, Ghost Valley 1 would overlap with Broken Pier, and while I could opt to use Cheep Cheep Lagoon for a water course instead alongside Choco Island 1, a Shell Cup with a plain circuit, Cheep Cheep Lagoon, and a simple SNES course is a rather tough sell in my opinion, because this would kind of be asking the Wii U track to save the cup, and most of the popular courses from that game are really around the Star Cup to begin with. We don't want the Shell Cup to just feel like a total throwaway. So what all is eliminated here? Well, a surprising amount that makes the remaining discussion simpler. Starting off, Broken Pier is our boardwalk course. That definitely gets rid of Ghost Valley 1 and 3, but I'm also going to add Twisted Mansion as well as a spooky track. If you wanted to call that Luigi's track, we added Wii Luigi Circuit 2, so I don't think that there's really a need for it at this point. I don't think Koopa Beach 1 necessarily pushes out the remaining water-themed courses, and I actually think a more advanced one likely should be selected still, but as a water course in the Shell Cup, I will be eliminating both Cheep Cheep Lagoon and Water Park, since they would likely need to be in the early cups to justify their inclusion. Even if I do think BC4 would be a prime candidate to be a DLC track in this hypothetical game, this wouldn't stop me from eliminating it from the base game as well. And as mentioned, my doubting that they'd go back-to-back games with SNES BCs would potentially eliminate those courses as well. And if that is my thought, I would need to eliminate Donut Plains 2 as well, since Donut Plains 3 was an MK8. As mentioned though, this pattern has never stopped them from putting a new Mario Circuit level in, so Mario Circuit 4 would be left on the table still. So now our updated recap, we have 9 of 24 in, we've eliminated 22, our pool is 33 tracks and we need 15 more, so almost half. So what else could we put in the Shell Cup? I think we need to grab a 3DS and Wii U track when looking at the board, and at first glance I was considering leaving out our previous Mushroom Cup finale tracks from the Shell Cup since we have 6 cups instead of 4 now, but I think it would actually be a good idea to spice up the first cup a little bit with one of them. And I think that the best way to do that would be to add both Wii U's Sweet Sweet Canyon and 3DS Shy Guy Bazaar. I strongly considered Flomp Ruins here, but that would also force Sweet Sweet Canyon out of the first cup, and while I could move Flomp Ruins to the Banana Cup as well, when thinking more on it, I don't want the return of Toad's Factory to just overshadow it, so I think that either Flomp Ruins or Shy Guy Bazaar could be an exciting end to the Shell Cup, but having all 3 of our most recent Mushroom Cup finales might be a little much. I've had Sweet Sweet Canyon in the Shell Cup for like every prediction I've ever done, and it is for good reason. I think it is a pretty distinct vibe for a Mushroom Cup course. It's not going to be the one that blows you away, but it is memorable in my mind. And adding Shy Guy Bazaar, well, it's a pretty popular pick, and it also adds to our flexibility a little bit, since it's going to be passed off as a desert track in my mind. So here's a look at my hypothetical Shell Cup. Despite selecting Shy Guy Bazaar, I actually think that Daisy Hills is still a good fit. With no donut plains and both Moo Moo courses gone now too, a simple nature course is needed regardless. And initially it was a course that I assumed needed to be in a Shell Cup. I also realized I'd be creating the exact same Shell Cup I predicted in the past if I included it there, and genuinely speaking, I think it would actually work better in the second cup in the context of my prediction. Keep in mind with 6 Retro Cups, it's still one of the simplest courses despite being in a potential second cup, and I think there are a lot more fan favorite courses that could be lined up to fit the second cup as well, so keeping it simple for the first track might result in some better balance overall. There's a part of me that wanted to lead the entire Retro Cup selection off with this course, but with Moo Moo Meadows doing it in 8, perhaps it's time for his circuit to lead the charge again anyway. Now I understand that Daisy Hills and Shy Guy Bazaar were in tour, but so is pretty much every 3DS course. I could have maybe taken Woohoo Loop as well, but I kind of felt that Mushroom City should be prioritized as the traffic course with barely any GCN slots remaining. Anyways though, with these inclusions, we're now halfway finished, but the following recap is going to be slightly different than the last ones. I'm realizing though that there are a few tracks I would label as more unlikely due to some inclusions that we've made, but I wouldn't necessarily eliminate them right now. So I've made a new tier called Pending for tracks that I'm leaning no on that I don't want to straight up eliminate yet. For instance, a good example is Cheap Cheap Island because we already have a beach course, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there can't be 2. I'm also moving Woohoo Loop there. We already have a course with some cars on it, and some of the easier 3DS tracks are added already, but I wouldn't eliminate it quite yet. Sweet Sweet Canyons Edition will result in me moving Sky High Sundae to the elimination category though. I think there is a solid overlap in idea here, and I don't think that they would do both of them. Additionally, with Shy Guy Bazaar added, I find it a little bit more difficult to find any potential use for Choco Island 1. Choco Island tracks kind of act as the desert tracks of SMK, even if they probably aren't exactly that, and with Koopa Beach 1 in as well, I think it's probably a maybe next time at this point. I've also moved our other 3 desert courses to Pending. Shy Guy Bazaar doesn't feel like a kill shot for these courses because its desert sitting is kind of secondary to the Bazaar Magic Carpets and all that, but technically we don't need a track in the desert category anymore. And Shy Guy Falls is being moved to Pending as well. It doesn't really overlap with Bazaar and theming, but it's kind of hard seeing both Shy Guy tracks being added here. And I forgot to make the modification to the graphic, but I'm also going to be moving Thwomp Ruins there as well next update for reasons I've already stated. So halfway done, we have 21 still in the main pool, 7 pending, and we still got to take 12. Unfortunately now we're starting to get into territory where the next step isn't always as obvious, but with half the courses in, we can really start to get a good picture of how this is really developing, so we're going to take a look at how these tracks might fit into potential cups. This will put things into perspective, because in reality we're going to probably need Wii U courses in almost every track, if not all, as you can see now. And it kind of felt like our Shell Cup we only had 4 games as options, and I think that might be a recurring theme. So there's probably a small puzzle to solve here that putting the actual cups up might help put into context. So currently we have the beginning of these tracks and I guess the very ending sorted, and I've spaced the Wario tracks about as far as humanly possible, so the rest is going to be about just filling in pieces now. But I suppose I'm going to have to explain the cup names, aren't I? Well, honestly speaking, this is pretty unscientific. It is hard for me to believe that they're going to just reuse the same ones as in Mario Kart 8. Like, can you really have a Triforce Cup if there's no Zelda track in it, for instance? I know the Lightning Cup has traditionally been the final cup, but I think that they were kind of cooking with the Blue Shell Cup and the Booster Pass. It'd be my bet to be the one cup from the Booster Pass that carries over, because the Blue Shell isn't necessarily attached to any track in particular, except maybe a Rainbow Road after the Booster Pass. But if that's the case, there should always be a Rainbow Road ready for it. And the Lightning Cup, on the other hand, has had instances in the past of it finishing off of courses that weren't Rainbow Roads, so yeah, I'm actually putting the Blue Shell Cup last. Now, most traditional Mario Kart Cups have been items in the series before, outside of the iconic unlockable Special Cup, so for my other 3 cups, I kept that theming with what I consider to be series mainstays at this point. That includes the Bob-omb Cup, alongside my middle 2 Nitro Cups, the Super Horn Cup, and Bullet Bill Cup. Why is the Bob-omb Cup the Retro Cup? Well, Mushroom City has bomb cars, and Wario's special item was the Bob-omb and his own stadiums in the cup, so it checks out to me. If you have better names for them, go ahead and write in the comments. I won't argue with you guys on this. There's not really a puzzle to solve here. I think they'll be something new, but I don't actually care what they are. I really just care about the tracks, but without the cups, the tracks need places to go. But anyway, let's get back on track. Typically, you're going to have a few retro circuit courses. We already have one, but if history indicates something, usually there are more. In DS, they had a bunch of really basic circuits, and in Mario Kart Wii, they gave us 3 separate Mario circuits, but since then, they've settled on one simpler one and one more advanced one. I think that trend continues here. But to be honest, I don't think it happens with the Wii U Mario circuit. When I think of that course, it feels like the simpler circuit if anything to me, and its relationship with Mario Kart Stadium is kind of weird, I guess. I expect either 3DS Mario Circuit or MC4 to get a spot, with the other falling and pending. Which one should I choose? Well, some other considerations must be made first. A wintry course is also needed. That is something that has been an absolute given for every retro selection up to this point, and it was nearly a given in each Booster Pass wave. That's how much they like their winter courses. Ice Ice Outpost and Merry Mountain come to mind as prime candidates, but I do actually think that I want to opt for a Vanilla Lake here. Like I said in my Booster Pass remake video, every SNES track type has been remade up to this point in the main series except for the Vanilla Lakes, and with so many SNES options off the board anyway, it does kind of just make sense. This doesn't necessarily eliminate Mario Circuit 4 for me, but it would feel difficult to justify 3 SNES courses. It's hard for me since MC4 wasn't brought back in Tour, but I think I'm going to go with SNES Vanilla Lake 2 to contrast from the much simpler Koopa Beach 1 and take 3DS Mario Circuit as my more advanced circuit track. One track type that has been much more common than I expected has been the underwater course. This is because the mechanic debuted only 2 games ago in Mario Kart 7, but I've made some realizations already. With Cheep Cheep Lagoon and Wario Shipyard off my board already, I'm already running out of options. And with how quick we're going through the retro tracks these days, I expect that one of these courses would likely be in the game after, so we have to burn at least another one here, and perhaps even more than that. Dolphin Shoals and Piranha Plant Cove seem like the tracks that utilize underwater the most, but weirdly I see Dolphin Shoals as more favorable here, and this has to do with me feeling that Piranha Plant Pipeline might also find its way into this game. However, I also have a gut feeling that Pipeline might appear as a Nitro course in some sort of unique way. Still, with this considered, alongside the need for a lot of Wii U tracks to begin with, and the general popularity of the Epic Sax solo, I think this all shines favorably for Dolphin Shoals. One other option I see as a likely addition would be Squeaky Clean Sprint. It is a heavy water track as well, but not nearly as much as Dolphin Shoals, and I think perhaps these two alongside Koopa Beach 1 would be a good balance of water courses here with all varying themes. Considering Cove and the 3DS tracks, alongside the strong possibility of a new water track itself, there will probably be plenty to choose from left over, and I think the 3 we have here would all be unique enough from the others to not feel like they're overlapping too strongly in theme. Anyways, we still have 8 selections to make, but things are at least a little bit simpler now. We need to make a run on a bunch of MK8 courses to fill out most of these cups. To start, one might ask why I placed Dolphin Shoals in only the 3rd cup, but if I'm being honest, I think it's because the wave of 8 U tracks is mainly going to take from your more advanced cups like the Star and Special Cup. But luckily, we also have some of the DLC to work with here, and that gives us some flexibility. We can add up to 4 more Wii U tracks, so I think it's time to see if we can select 4 from the remaining categories. This would get us to our golden number of 24, but that being said, there's only 5 non-pending tracks remaining outside the Wii U tracks, so it might be somewhat difficult. What immediately jumps out to me is Maka Woohoo and Merry Mountain. We don't really have any mountain courses right now, so one of them feels like they'd be a fit, but when I look at the other 2 Switch courses, I cannot help but feel that they would probably be preferred options by the fans. Considering we have a snowy track already and can add a mountain in Maka Woohoo, it kind of feels like the writing is on the wall for Merry Mountain here. I do wonder if it would perhaps get ignored in the next game after this one because of Mount Wario, but that feels like a question for later. We'd also be in a situation where both Woohoo tracks are in the last 5 remaining 3DS tracks if I don't take it here, and I'd like to avoid those situations as well in the future. So if all things considered, I think that taking Maka Woohoo is probably the play. It can fit in as the 3rd track in the Lightning Cup to maintain everybody's favorite pattern, and with my new cup alignment, it wouldn't even be taking DS Bowser's Castle out of place either. I know I said earlier that they don't always go for priority retros, but I could definitely see it being the case here for Ninja Hideaway and Yoshi's Island. I think it's actually possible that they want Tour to be remembered more positively perhaps since the natural reaction to it has always been negative, and bringing back these 2 courses would be a great way to do that. They are also pretty distinct tracks from the rest of the list. Yoshi's Island feels like a track that could be used in an earlier cup in my opinion, and Ninja Hideaway on the other hand feels like it has a lot of Final Cup energy to me. I don't see them doing Dragon Driftway alongside Ninja Hideaway personally, but I think the implications from Yoshi's Island might be even more interesting. Now this whole time I have kind of been expecting to pass on GBA Lakeside Park. Like I said early on, 3 tracks from one cup seems to be a little bit much, and this track is also in BC4's original cup. Yet, I don't see this as an absolute disqualification. They've done it before with the MK64 Mushroom Cup in Mario Kart 7, and like Calamari Desert was in the Leaf Cup, I could see them putting Lakeside Park perhaps even in the first half of the Retro Cups, like they did with DK Jungle and Donut Plains 3 in Mario Kart 8, tracks that also originally appeared as Special Cup intros. But what has allowed me to talk myself into Lakeside is that Yoshi's Island provides a new Yoshi track, and Shy Guy Bazaar kind of covers the desert theme already, so with that, Yoshi Desert feels a little bit redundant now. Additionally speaking, with the water section alongside Koopa Beach 1 and the other water courses, Cheep Cheep Island feels a little bit redundant too, since, this is also an island course. On the other hand, Lakeside Park does feel like a better fit now than in Mario Kart 8, since it was the original track to have an active volcano eruption, and with Grumble Volcano likely not returning here, it feels like there is room for a more hostile outdoor track, so yeah, I think we have a case to add it. This brings our total up to 20, with 4 Wii U courses potentially filling in the last 4 slots, so let's see if there are enough fits. The good news here is I see a lot of popular tracks that fans would likely want in the next game. The bad news is that there's also only 5 left here, which really goes to show how tight of a fit this all is. To make things more difficult, I think the choice is going to have to come down to either Sunshine Airport or Super Bell Subway. There's a lot of similarities between them. They're both travel-oriented tracks heavily inspired by main series games, with a lot of potential to spoil other tracks in the game trailer. So if we're taking only one here, the question is, are the other 3 tracks fits? Well, surprisingly and perhaps luckily, I do think that they are. For how limited the remaining pool is, Cloud Top Cruise as a Lightning Cup intro is an absolute slam dunk of an option. There'd honestly be no better option if you had the full series available to you to choose from. And Electrodrome I think could also pull off the Final Cup intro well. It is a really flashy course that many people liked a lot, and I think its presence alongside Cloud Top Cruise would make people feel good about the Wii U selection. I think this Blue Shell Cup would be very popular as well. Wild Woods is more debatable, we have a few nature courses already, but none quite have the same vibe as it. Almost like Sunset Wilds, it could be seen as a Shy Guy course that isn't explicably a Shy Guy course, but considering they debuted this in the same game as Shy Guy Falls, I think it could coexist fine with Shy Guy Bazaar, but I like the idea of it being the Leaf Cup outro. I can't really move up Dolphin Shoals because of Squeaky Clean Sprint, and this keeps it sufficiently spaced from Shy Guy Bazaar as well. This leaves our last slot for the 2 we mentioned earlier, and while I think this will be unpopular, I'm going to take Super Bell Subway over Sunshine Airport. I actually really adore this track and think it's one of the coolest ones that they've ever made in a Mario Kart game, and I kind of feel like since you can't really fall off on it that it might be a better early game track, even if Sunshine Airport isn't exactly a daunting course by any means, and while there may be riots over no Sunshine Airport or Mount Wario, I think the overall Wii U selection is still quite solid with a lot of courses to look forward to down the road, and with that, we've hit our 24. So there you have it, a set of 24 that makes sense to me and maybe even you. But with that stated, what makes sense to us may no longer make sense to the developers themselves. They truly can only do one more game in this exact style, and that's for more reasons than just the N64 tracks running dry. So do I expect something completely different? Well, I'm not entirely sure. But I do want to show one more potential alternative using Bernie Python's idea at the beginning of the video. What all would change for me? Well, not too much, but there would definitely be some more flexibility here since we don't have to include pretty much all the remaining tracks that might be a fit. We have a few options to select here. So let's just cut to the chase. Here would be my final list of 16 using this idea. Keep in mind we're going to add 2 cups after we go through this. 11 of the tracks from my standard 24 course prediction have been cut here and 3 have been added to get back up to 16, but let's talk about why. To start, it was harder to justify 2 SNES tracks when decreasing to just 16 tracks. I decided that keeping Vanilla Lake 2 would be more important as there are less available winter tracks and it's the only unused SNES track type in the main series. Keeping it though opened up a spot in the Shell Cup, which as mentioned was already difficult to fill. Without Koopa Beach 1 though, I felt that GBA Cheep Cheep Island was now a fitting replacement, and acts as one of the few courses left on the board that could actually work as a Shell Cup track. The tour version specifically is not too daunting, and I think it would be one of the better Shell Cup courses that would be available. While it may not be popular, I cut Yoshi's Island from this version. I was either going to cut it or Squeaky Clean Sprint, but Cheep Cheep Island felt like the only reasonable remaining Shell Cup course I could choose if I was no longer using an SNES course. Both tracks are island themed and have it in the name, and when thinking about it, Squeaky Clean Sprint and Cheep Cheep Island provide more variety as far as the water tracks go, as opposed to Cheep Cheep Island and Dolphin Shoals. So Squeaky Clean will be getting the nod instead as my second tour original, and Dolphin will be the first of many Wii U cuts. Most of my cuts were Wii U courses because realistically it's hard to fit 6 of them into 4 cups without running into problems fast. Sweet Sweet and Cloud Top felt like the best fits to me. Part of this has to do with me really wanting to put Cloud Top in the Lightning Cup, but I do think that they really like this course and its ties back to Mario Galaxy. And of course, Sweet Sweet Canyon is really one of the few tracks that they really have available for the Shell Cup. But with many popular Wii U courses inevitably being taken off the list, I felt that adding Sunshine Airport over Super Bell would be a fitting inclusion in the second cup of 4 rather than the second cup of 6, and while I prefer Super Bell Subway, Sunshine Airport definitely seems to be more recognizable, and if you're only going with 3 Wii U courses, some heavy hitters are definitely necessary as, well, priority retros. I also cut 3DS Mario Circuit, leaving us with only 1 circuit track here. Why exactly would I do that for the worst Wii Mario Circuit in my mind? Well, the Wii circuits are just in a more dire long-term situation, and there were good 3DS options for the early cups already, but it also has to do with my extra cups, or the ones that are allowing multi-time retro tracks. These extra cups will explain all my remaining cuts I haven't gotten to already. Now, I only did 1 cup of these remade retro courses, and all of them are tracks from Mario Kart 64 through DS. This is because every retro track originating from Wii and 7 to ever touch a console Mario Kart game was just in Mario Kart 8, and I wanted this to be an opportunity to focus on the retro tracks that were passed over in the Booster Pass, for instance. So starting things off is going to be GBA Luigi Circuit, our second circuit. And this is why I gave Wii Mario Circuit the nod over Wii Luigi Circuit. This was one of the Mario Kart DS retro tracks that was never playable online, and as one of my favorite circuit tracks, I think it deserves a second opportunity to shine. Dino Dino Jungle in my mind is the best remaining fit from Double Dash when considering the tracks on the board and the fact that it wasn't in Mario Kart 8. I was actually kind of bummed that it didn't make the cut, and while I hate to replace Lakeside Park, there were already fitting GBA options to select in this timeline. Broken Pier might not be the most fair cut, but I think it would make sense to not be in if they could add Banshee Boardwalk. Like mentioned in my video about Second Time Remakes, I feel that this track has been treated more unfairly than every other course in the series, and despite being the type of track I would have expected to see in Tour, it never really came. So I think that this would be a great spot to potentially remake it for, and it could give the N64 selection a much needed boost up to 2 courses. And finally, DS Airship Fortress should be self-explanatory. This course felt like the biggest snub of the Booster Pass to me, and I think it would be a really popular addition. I hope nobody minds that my DS tracks were the Bowser-themed ones. I don't think it's a huge deal personally. And I also realized I had to switch the cup names around if I was going to have Airship Fortress to close this out. So yeah, the Bullet Bill Cup is a retro course now in this timeline. So my only cut not yet explained is Maka Woohoo, and this is because I didn't cut it. Rather, I'm going to use the Spiny Cup as a bit of a gimmicky crossover cup, and that includes Maka Woohoo as a Wii series crossover course. The remaining tracks in this cup all come from the Wii U DLC. I didn't want to just choose all of them, so I think 1 cup is fine here. I felt that Big Blue as a closer would be much more popular than Mute City personally. It just has that different energy and vibe, the 1-lap course, the end of it all. It makes sense to me. And it gives kind of a nice nod to the fact that many people are going to call this the Blue Shell Cup anyway. But if I'm going more crazy on my F-Zero option, I feel that I should keep it simple and go with Hyrule Circuit over Animal Crossing for the other spot. The last track in this cup is going to be Excitebike Arena, which has always been a weird fit, yet oddly popular amongst the competitive Mario Kart 8 player base, and it's kind of off in its own world as far as courses go, but maybe it would work in this spot. And while I understand that I've broken many rules including all these Wii U tracks in the same cup, I see a crossover cup like this as a bit of an exception. You can't really create a proper one without doing this to begin with if you're only using retros. This selection would give the following tally of courses, which I find somewhat balanced. It does admittedly shaft Super Mario Kart, which is something Nintendo has pretty frequently done to be honest. But if this outrages you, I do have one more alternative suggestion that you can pretend I took. Just pretend I axed Excitebike Arena and threw in one of the RMX Choco Island tracks. Do I think that this would be more popular? Probably not, but that would be your second SMK nod and one that would be fitting for a weird final extra cup. Anyways, this was also a fun suggestion, so shout out to Bernie Python. If you guys liked the video at large, you know what to do. And as always, I look forward to reading all of your comments if you guys want to drop your own retro predictions. I see it all the time. This is the video, though, if you want to do it for sure. And in this new timeline, it's hard to say that there are any wrong answers, but as always, let's try to keep them somewhere in the realm of reasonability. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all next time.